Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight we focus on the high seas. India is looking to buy nuclear submarines from France. How much is the deal worth? Has the deal been done? How does it help both India and France? We'll bring you a full report on India's naval strategy and tensions rise in the waters elsewhere. China fired water cannons at a Filipino vessel near the Spratly Islands. Manila has called the move excessive and offensive. Meanwhile, Russian and Chinese vessels are sailing towards Alaska. The US calls it a provocation. It has deployed 4 destroyers. We'll bring you up to speed with all the developments. Also in the news, a new expose on China's propaganda campaign through news outlets. India is among the targets and it has triggered a political debate. Imran Khan is in jail. The elections will most likely be delayed. What is the Pakistan Army's game plan? Will India start importing wheat? Does this signal shortage? We bring you the numbers and the statements. Will Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk really fight? They say the cage fight will be live streamed. And even Zoom employees are being called to office. Is this the death of work from home? It's an action-packed Monday. The headlines first. Russia says peace possible if Ukraine stops fighting. Moscow also asks the West to stop supplying arms to Kiev. This comes after Saudi Arabia held peace talks over the weekend in Jeddah. Ukraine, India, China and the United States were part of the summit, which excluded Russia. Iran's foreign minister is in Japan, the first such visit since 2019. It's a rare visit by Iran's top diplomat to a G7 member country. The purpose of the visit has not been disclosed, but reports say Japan will press Iran to stop supplying arms to Russia. Thailand's election runners-up, Pheu Thai, announced a fresh coalition. It includes the conservative Boom Jay Thai party. Pheu Thai was founded by former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Lawmakers hope the new coalition will overcome resistance from the military. The kingdom has not been able to form a government since the election in the month of May. Thousands of scouts are leaving South Korea due to an incoming storm. Just days ago, a heat wave caused mass illness among the scouts. Typhoon Khanun is due to make landfall in South Korea on Thursday. Around 43,000 scouts have been camping in the northern province. Barbie has reason to party. Greta Gerwig's blockbuster makes history. The film has entered the $1 billion club in less than a month from its release. With this, Gerwig becomes the first solo female director with a $1 billion movie. Last month, Prime Minister Modi travelled to France. It was a high-profile visit. You watched it here on Firstpost. Modi was the guest of honour on the French National Day. He was given the highest award of France, the Legion of Honour. He attended the Bastille Day parade. An Indian contingent marched down the Champs-Élysées. It was quite a grand affair and the cameras captured it. But another story was playing out behind the scenes. And tonight we want to tell you about that story. Away from the fanfare in Paris, a French Navy ship showed up in the Indian Ocean. The ship is called Lorraine. It visited Colombo. It was welcomed by the Sri Lankan Navy. It conducted what is called a passing exercise. And what is that? It's a type of military exercise. It is done to enhance military cooperation. It improves coordination between two forces. So what kind of drills did France and Sri Lanka engage in? Well, they conducted formations and ship maneuvers, also communication exercises. The French vessel stayed in Colombo for 4 days. We have some photographs. Take a look at this. That's the commander of the French Navy on board the Lorraine. What do you make of the timing of this exercise? The French naval ship in Sri Lanka when Prime Minister Modi was in Paris. It was not a coincidence. India is building up its naval power. It has in fact set a plan in motion, and France is an important player in this plan. The plan has 2 parts: upgrading weapons and enhancing cooperation. Let's take it one by one. The upgrades first. The Indian Navy is adding more muscle. India wants nuclear-powered submarines, not 1 or 2. India wants to acquire 6 of them. France has aced this technology. and they're ready to supply to India. Reports say talks are already underway. The idea is to get nuclear submarines. These are next generation subs. They run on nuclear power and they generate their own power. How does it work? There is a small reactor on the submarine. The reactor powers it and unlocks immense capability. Nuclear submarines have limitless range. They're difficult to detect and they travel fast. The older submarines needed refueling, so they had to surface often. They could not remain submerged for long periods of time. They could not go for long missions. But a nuclear submarine, a nuclear-powered submarine, does not have this weakness, which is why India needs it. Reports say New Delhi is prioritizing this purchase. Earlier, the Navy wanted an aircraft carrier. It was supposed to be called the IAC-2. That stands for Indigenous Aircraft Carrier 2, IAC. Indigenous meaning they wanted to build one at home. The carrier was supposed to be designed and manufactured in India, but for now that plan is on hold. Apparently, the focus now is on smaller ships and stealthy submarines, like the ones that France wants to provide. And why is Paris interested in arming the Indian Navy? There's big money involved, of course. We don't have a figure, but given that we're talking nuclear submarines, it could run into millions of dollars. Plus, France has some history. It was supposed to build such nuclear subs for Australia. The deal was for 12 submarines worth $66 million, but it did not happen. France was betrayed by its own friends. In 2021, a military alliance called AUKUS was announced. AUKUS stands for Australia, UK and US. They sprung a rude surprise on the French. Australia pulled out of the deal with France. It signed up to procure subs made by America and the UK. France called Australia's move, quote-unquote, a stab in the back and a betrayal. It lost the money, also the chance to build an alliance in the Indo-Pacific. So France has turned to India, and India could use their technology, so it's a win-win for both. New Delhi has cleared the purchase, but the final agreement is yet to be locked. Both sides are confident about pushing this through. So that's one part of India's plan, upgrading the weapons. The second part is expanding cooperation. The French visit to Sri Lanka was all about this. We saw more action last week. This time, 2 frontline ships of the Indian Navy sailed to the Pacific. They docked in Port Moresby. That's the capital of Papua New Guinea. So the Indian ships made a port call. They engaged with local officials. What were Indian Navy ships doing in the Pacific? Again, there is a French connection. Last month, during Prime Minister Modi's visit, India and France made a deal. They agreed to expand cooperation in the Pacific. The joint statement said India and France are quote-unquote resident powers and key partners with vital stakes in the Indo-Pacific. They promised to work together, and soon enough, the Indian Navy made a port call in the Pacific. The result is the Indian Navy's port call, like I said, not the first of its kind and certainly not the last. But these events mark an important shift in India's posture. Speaking of naval power, Russia and China are making a huge display of it, and that too against the United States. Last week, they carried out a joint operation. Russia and China carried out a joint operation. Their vessels moved towards the US, around 11 of them. They sailed towards this location, Aleutian Islands in Alaska. Now, Alaska is a strategically important American state. It doesn't border mainland US. At the same time, it has a maritime border with Russia. So Alaska is vulnerable, which is why last week's operation was so daring. Experts say it is unprecedented. Such a large flotilla has never sailed towards the United States. They're calling it provocative and aggressive. So 2 questions here. What was the flotilla doing there? And what is Washington doing about it? On paper, it was supposed to be a joint exercise between Russia and China, just an innocent patrol. China says it was not targeted at a third country, but the Americans are not buying it. They have responded in kind. The US has deployed 4 destroyers near Alaska. It has also sent a reconnaissance plane. So America means business. But Alaska was not the only provocation. China was targeting the Philippines as well. On Sunday, 2 Filipino vessels were running a supply mission. They were heading to the Spratly Islands. It is located in the South China Sea. It is claimed by multiple countries, including China and the Philippines. So on Sunday, 2 vessels were headed there, the Spratly Islands. But one of them never made it. It was intercepted by a Chinese Coast Guard ship. Take a look at what happened next.
sir.
Sorry.
0.7 knots, sir.
Starboard back one.
Starboard back one.
In case you missed that, let me explain what happened here. The Chinese ship fired water cannons at the Filipino vessel. Now, this is not normal practice. It is considered to be aggressive and confrontational. And what did the Philippines do? The ship could not complete its supply mission. Also, Manila summoned the Chinese envoy. It condemned China's actions as excessive and offensive. Listen to this.
We continue to assert our sovereignty. We continue to assert our territorial rights in the face of all of these challenges, and consistent with the international law and UNCLOS especially. So that is always been our stand, and but we still have to keep communicating with the Chinese government, with President Xi, with Beijing.
China, of course, does not see it that way. They claim most of the South China Sea, including the Spratly Islands. So Beijing is blaming the Philippines for what happened. They say the Filipino ships violated China's sovereignty. Now, there is some history here. The South China Sea spans over 3.5 million square kilometers. It is important for three reasons. One, the natural resources lying below the South China Sea are energy treasures, around 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Secondly, the trade routes. Goods worth $5 trillion pass through this waterway. And three, Taiwan. The South China Sea is key to repelling a Chinese invasion. The US is counting on that. The Philippines is an important part of that strategy, and China realizes this. Their ships regularly confront or shadow Filipino vessels. It happened in June this year as well. 2 Filipino vessels were running a supply mission. They were closing in on Spratly Islands, and that's when 2 Chinese ships approached them. One of them came within 90 meters. Another incident was in April. A Chinese Coast Guard ship cut across a Filipino vessel. The two almost collided. But this water cannon incident ranks higher on aggression. The last time China used this strategy was in the year 2021. So what is the game plan here? What is Beijing trying to do? Well, the Philippines got a new president last year, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. During his campaign, he promised to strike a balance between China and the US. His predecessor also did that, Duterte. But as president, his policy has been different. In April, Marcos signed a new agreement with the US. Until then, Washington had access to 5 bases in the Philippines, 5 military bases in the Philippines. Now they have access to 9 bases, so 4 extra military bases. Marcos won the presidency by running a populist/nationalist campaign. And what do populists love? An enemy out to grab their territory. That's China for the Philippines. Marcos has repeatedly promised to protect his country's sovereignty. It's the kind of rhetoric that helps him. Having said that, Marcos cannot afford a full divorce. And why is that? Because of bilateral trade. China-Philippines trade is more than $80 billion, 80 billion. Beijing is Manila's largest trading partner, but maybe not for long. The US and its allies are looking to offer alternatives. Last month, European Union chief Ursula von der Leyen visited Manila. She was the first EU chief ever to visit the country. Both sides agreed to restart free trade talks. They also discussed diversification of supply chains. All of this was aimed at China, and days later, their ships confront Filipino vessels. Coincidence? I don't think so. Countries in Southeast Asia have an unhappy marriage with China. They hate China's territorial claims, but they love China's trade. So the West is trying to offer alternatives to sway Southeast Asian countries away from Beijing. Trade and investment is just one part of that strategy. Mutual defense is the other. The US State Department released a warning after Sunday's incident. Listen to what they said. We reaffirm that an armed attack on Philippine public vessels, aircraft, and armed forces would invoke US mutual defense commitments under the 1951 US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. What does that mean? Will the US protect Manila from a Chinese invasion? Will it offer weapon support? Or will Washington deploy troops and carriers? The treaty does not mention any of that. It is ambiguous, maybe by design. China has repeatedly tested this ambiguity by harassing Filipino vessels. So far, the US response has been limited. Strong criticism, but no military response. Not like the one that we saw in Alaska. Such incidents have become the new normal in the Pacific. America flexed its muscles when Alaska was involved, but will it do so for allies in the region? That is what China is probing for. And here in India, there is talk of importing wheat. It's usually no-go territory. If India is importing wheat, it means something is wrong, very wrong. The question is what? For starters, prices are up. Wheat prices in New Delhi increased 12% in the last 4 months. This is a 6-month high. Plus, the output is below expectation. The government projected around 112 million tons in harvest. The actual output could be lower. Traders say around 102 million tons. How did that happen? In India, wheat is harvested between February and May. The weather was erratic during this time. Maybe that's why the output is low. Whatever the reason, the government has decided to act. Senior officials say a number of options are available. They highlighted 3 of them. Number 1, lowering the import duty on wheat. Number 2, abolishing the import duty, no tax. And number 3, tweaking the stock holding limits, basically setting a limit on how much wheat can be held. Now, why is this important? Importing and exporting is common for every country. So why is wheat an exception? Because India does not import wheat. At least the government does not. The private sector is free to buy wheat from abroad, but this carries an import duty of 40%. 40% tax for importing wheat in India. The government says we could slash this or abolish it completely. How would that help? Well, if you reduce import duty, more quantities will be imported. More imports equal more supply. More supply equals less price. It's a chain reaction. If it happens, it would be very, very significant. India is only the 174th biggest importer of wheat. In 2021, the trade was worth just $23,000. That's negligible. But do you know what will be even more significant? If the government decides to import wheat, that would signal danger. Let me explain. India's annual wheat demand is around 108 million tons. Almost all of it is produced locally. India also has a reserve stock of 28 million tons, so importing was never necessary. We never had to do it. We had enough wheat. But after the war in Ukraine, some traders were spooked. The supply of fertilizers has been affected all over the world, not just India. Climate change was in overdrive and global demand was rising. So what did India do? In May 2022, that is last year, New Delhi banned the export of wheat. India said we need to preserve our output. And now there is talk of importing. Some reports mention a deal with Russia to buy 9 million tons. New Delhi says there is no such plan. But let's look at the trajectory of things. First, wheat exports were banned. Then export of non-basmati white rice was banned. And now there is talk of removing import duty on wheat. If you add all of this, what do you get? There is concern about food prices in India, about inflation. India has largely escaped this problem in 2022. Inflation was high, but it was not out of control. The Reserve Bank of India announced multiple rounds of interest hikes. But by April this year, they were paused. And the reason was quite simple. India's inflation had cooled down. It was below the RBI's upper limit of 6%. In fact, in June, it was 4.8%. So the rate hikes were stopped. There was even talk of a cut in interest rates. But all that could go out the window. Why? Because of food prices. Take a look at these numbers. Tomato prices were up 176% last month. Rice, salt, milk and pulses were up more than 10%. So chances are July inflation was much higher. We will know the exact number on the 14th of August. That's when last month's inflation data will be released. I'm sure the RBI is watching all of this. Their next policy meeting is this week. And on Thursday, the new rates will be announced. From the looks of it, the RBI will be hawkish. Experts say they could in fact increase the inflation outlook for the next quarter. And if that happens, it will affect India's recovery. So the wheat situation is not an isolated one. It is part of a larger problem in the Indian economy, the problem of rising food prices. We can debate the reasons: climate change, the Ukraine war, supply chains. All of it has played a part. But it's more important to look ahead, to address these problems going forward, because last year, India had promised to feed the world. Now we are talking about importing wheat. The trajectory is far from ideal. We have another story from India. It has dominated the national discourse today. If you live on the internet, it's hard to miss it. If you get your news on the internet, you should not miss it. This story features an American millionaire, a web of non-profits and shell companies, and the government of China. Together, they make a dangerous cocktail, an unparalleled campaign of influence, a vehicle to carry Chinese propaganda and brainwash people into buying Beijing's line. This is what the story is all about. It was first published by the New York Times. The protagonist is this man, Neville Roy Singham. He created an IT company called ThoughtWorks. He's also been linked to several charities and non-profits. Almost all of them are based in the US, but they influence events and ideas far beyond American shores. Apparently, they've been pushing Chinese propaganda in countries like India, Brazil, and South Africa, among others. And despite orchestrating such a big network, his name does not appear anywhere. In public filings, he is not listed as an owner, not even as a board member. Yet he controls all of them. How many organizations are we talking about? The report does not give a number. It says the network is large in scale and well funded. They have access to at least $275 million in donations. And how is this cash mobilized? Through 4 non-profits. The money is funneled through these 4 entities. They have almost no real presence. They have no offices or staff. In fact, they list UPS mailboxes as their address. These 4 entities are used to deposit the money, and from here it goes to different organizations and groups, all with a common goal: to further Beijing's talking points, to influence minds and win friends. The report says this network has been running for years. And what has it achieved? Meetings with US congressional aides, training politicians in Africa, backing election candidates in South Africa, and organizing protests in cities like London. They've been able to do all of this, but none of it matches what they've done with news. This money also went to news organizations of all descriptions, YouTube channels in the US, a publication in Brazil, and a news website in India, and many more outlets across the world. They all got this money. What for? For amplifying China's position. It is a sinister network, and not the first or only of its type. China is known to do stuff like this, to run influence campaigns the world over. There are 2 parts to their operations. Part 1, where they deploy traditional tactics like public diplomacy and media, and Part 2, which involves covert operations. All of it meant to further the cause of the Communist Party. In fact, Chinese mouthpieces have a global presence now. They're available in as many as 29 countries, and they openly amplify Xi Jinping's messages. They also use other means. Like in this case, in the United States, China deployed a marketing firm. Their job was to plant pro-China stories. Such stories were carried by at least 3 dozen news sites. They were amplified on internet platforms. Then we have Chinese bots. Their latest campaign targeted Latin America. There was a network of social media accounts boosting Chinese propaganda. They pushed a wide range of stories, from China's successes in space to their superiority in 5G technology. They talked about all of it. And the most coercive trick in China's toolbox is their police stations, overseas police stations. We've told you about them. They're all over the world. More than 100 such stations have been found in 53 countries. What do? They handle Beijing's dirty business, like spying, like putting pressure on Chinese expats and dissenters, even forcing them to return to China. So this latest revelation about a network of non-profits paying news media to publish pro-China stories fits right into their playbook. The man at the center of it, Neville Roy Singham, has denied all these charges, of course. He says he does not work for the Chinese government or the Communist Party of China. He claims, and I'm quoting, "I am guided by my beliefs." And what are his beliefs? Those who know Singham say that he is an admirer of Maoism. Maoism is the ideology of the Communist Party of China. It comes from Mao Zedong. In 2017, this man, Singham, sold his company, ThoughtWorks, and pumped his wealth into the NGOs we just spoke about. Was he just promoting his ideology, or was he acting on behalf of the Communist Party of China? These questions are now being debated the world over, including here in India. This report has triggered a political war in New Delhi. Parties on both sides are hurling accusations, and in the run-up to a major election, this battle will only intensify. And now for some health news. The Wuhan virus is back in the form of a new variant. It's called EG51 or Eris, which, by the way, is also the name of the ancient Greek goddess of strife and discord. Eris, not exactly a great sign. The Eris variant is spreading in the US and the UK. The number of cases is on the rise. It is also being called the main cause of hospitalization in the UK. Eris is believed to be of the Omicron lineage. It spreads faster. The World Health Organization says Eris is a variant it is monitoring, meaning it's not the worst or the most alarming, but it may cause concern, mostly because the immunity from previous infection or vaccination may be waning. Does that mean they're building a case for another booster? Here's a report.
It's been almost 4 years since the pandemic first began. But the Wuhan virus doesn't seem to stop reinventing itself. You know of the Delta and Omicron variants. You've heard of the numerous subvariants of Omicron. And now one of these subvariants is making headlines in the US and UK. The EG5.1, nicknamed Eris. Don't let the short and simple name fool you. Eris is making a mark, leading to a surge in cases in the US, UK and other parts of the world. Eris and its cousin variants have been driving most new cases in the US for 2 weeks now. The latest data from the US Centers for Disease Control says that 17.3% of all new US cases are caused by EG5. That's the variant family that includes Eris. How many people has it actually infected? The US isn't really keeping a track of case numbers. Remember, since the pandemic was declared over, monitoring has gone off a cliff. Those who bother to get tested often do it from home. So, case numbers are unreliable. But the CDC has kept track of hospitalizations due to the Wuhan virus. And that number was over 8,000 last week. It's a 12% increase in COVID hospitalizations. So the surge is real. Why isn't everyone panicking about COVID and the Eris variant? Because American doctors expected the annual summer COVID spike to return, and it has. And it isn't a wave, yet anyway. So while there's an uptick of cases, it isn't a return to the pandemic just yet. There's similar news from the UK. Britain still regularly checks how many respiratory issue cases are due to the Wuhan virus. The UK Health Security Agency checks about 4,400 cases a week. In the week ending July 30th, 5.4% of the respiratory issues were caused by COVID-19. It was responsible for only 3.7% the week before that. The values may seem small, but it's an increase of almost 1.5 times. That's not great news. By the end of July, Eris was behind almost 15% of all new COVID infections in the UK. It was responsible for 10% when the month began. So, you can see, Eris is steadily becoming more prevalent. Already, it's in second place behind the XBB 1.16 subvariant. That variant has been dominating UK cases for months now. But Eris is expected to overtake it. What about the rest of the world? India recorded 54 new cases today. It was 47 yesterday. That's a drop in the ocean considering India's population, but it doesn't mean people or the government can take it easy. More data about the variants behind the cases is needed. But if Eris has come to India, people should take precautions. Better safe than sorry, as they say. What should you look out for? Eris isn't too different from other Omicron offshoots. The symptoms are a runny nose, headaches, fatigue, sneezing, and a sore throat. According to reports, it isn't extremely deadly either. But vulnerable people still need to take care. People with comorbidities, the elderly especially. The variants may change, but they remain dangerous for the same people. To protect yourself, follow the same rules you did during the peak of the pandemic. Use masks and sanitizers. Try going only to well-ventilated places. Get your vaccine if you haven't already. And get booster doses if enough time has passed since your last shot. As much as we want to believe that the worst is over, we can't forget that the Wuhan virus is still around. Eris is just the latest iteration. It'll likely keep coming back in new forms. And all we can really do is take all precautions and be responsible.
In Pakistan, the inevitable has happened. Imran Khan has been arrested. Many would say he was asking for it. On Saturday, a local court in Lahore found him guilty. Of what? Well, there are 140 cases against him, but this one was about corruption. Imran Khan is accused of illegally selling state gifts for $500,000 and he's been convicted and jailed. The sentence is 3 years, the maximum, which also means that he cannot contest the election. Imran Khan has been barred from holding public office for the next 5 years. I guess it's job done for the Pakistan army. But why get him arrested? Imran Khan's party had already been broken up. His top leaders had abandoned him. So why the arrest? Well, maybe to prove a point. You may remember what happened last time Imran Khan was arrested. The date was 9th May 2023. Imran Khan rallied his supporters. He asked them to hit the streets. Even the army headquarters in Rawalpindi was targeted. This time he used the same strategy. Imran Khan recorded a message before his arrest. This is what he said. Listen to this.
जब तक ये पैगाम आप तक पहुंचेगा, मुझे ये अरेस्ट कर चुके होंगे और मैं जेल में होऊंगा, तो मेरी आपसे सिर्फ एक ही रिक्वेस्ट है, अपील है कि आपने घरों में चुप करके नहीं बैठना। मैं ये जो जदोजहद कर रहा हूँ, ये अपनी ज़ात के लिए नहीं कर रहा, ये अपनी कौम के लिए कर रहा हूँ, आपके लिए कर रहा हूँ, आपके बच्चों के मुस्तकबिल के लिए कर रहा हूँ। पुरअमन एहतजाज आपने करते रहना है जब तक कि आपको आपका हक नहीं मिलता, और वो सबसे बड़ा फंडामेंटल राइट है वोट के ज़रिए अपनी हुकूमत मुंतखब करना, ना तो किसी और कोई कब्ज़ा ग्रुप इस मुल्क के ऊपर कब्ज़ा करके बैठ जाए जो आज कब्ज़ा करके बैठा हुआ है।
Good speech. Did not help him though. The people had learned their lesson. They were not willing to risk water cannons or military trials. So what did they do? They stayed at home. There were some minor protests in Karachi, but nothing like the last time. Where does that leave Imran Khan? His lawyers have appealed the conviction in a higher court. They also want him shifted to a different jail. And why is that? Apparently, the facilities are not good at this one. Now, let's be clear about two things here. One, Imran Khan was corrupt. There are no two ways about it. And two, his conviction is about selective justice. If corruption was a bar, half of Pakistan's army and parliament would be in jail. So this is less about justice and more about politics. Imran Khan made one crucial mistake though. He assumed popularity would protect him. And no doubt he was popular. Thousands of people used to attend his rallies. But in Pakistan, popularity gets you nowhere. If you want power, you need the army. They can rig the elections in your favor. Speaking of which, there is talk of delaying the upcoming vote. Pakistan's law minister says elections can only be conducted after a new census. And how long will that take? At least 4 months. The current government's term expires on the 12th of August. After that, a caretaker government is supposed to take over. It must conduct elections within 3 months. So by November. But at this rate, who knows? Maybe the army wants to tie up the loose ends. Maybe they want to ensure that Imran Khan's judicial appeal does not succeed. We can speculate, but it's impossible to really know. Looking back, what do we make of this whole episode though? Of Imran Khan's rebellion? In the month of May, the army appeared to be shaken. The scenes were indeed unprecedented. But as they say, never bet against the army in Pakistan. General Asim Munir mounted a systematic campaign. He could have doubled down and arrested Imran Khan months ago. He did not do that. Instead, he waited. First, he rounded up hundreds of Imran Khan supporters. He tried some of them in military courts. The idea was not justice. The idea was intimidation. Then he targeted Imran Khan's top leaders. More than 100 of them left the party. Some of them have even floated a new one. The army allegedly cracked down on media as well. No frenzied coverage of Imran Khan, not even regular updates. The former Prime Minister was denied all of his weapons, his supporters, his lieutenants, and his public platforms, all gone. The final step of that plan was the arrest. It was a cold and calculated trap, something Imran Khan, the captain, would have been proud of. But the people of Pakistan won't be surprised. This is a cycle they're used to. The army takes what the army gives. Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. One is the owner of Twitter, or X. The other changed the world with Meta. They've never been the best of friends, but now this tech rivalry has gone a notch up. Or should I say, several notches up. These two men have decided to settle their differences in a cage fight. Now, we knew the tech world was competitive, but a cage fight is a bit much, even for eccentric billionaires. This fight will be live streamed on X/Twitter. Elon Musk says he may need surgery before the fight, but Zuckerberg says he is not holding his breath for it. So will the cage fight really happen, and who stands a better chance to win? Our next report tells you all about this billion-dollar fight club.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ultimate showdown. In one corner, we have the brain behind Tesla and SpaceX, Elon the Rocket Musk. In the other corner is the king of social media, Mark the data collector Zuckerberg. These tech titans often spar virtually, but this time it's not a battle of tweets or competing social media platforms. This time, it is about the real punch. Ties between the tech titans have always been frosty, but they became direct competitors in July. That's when Mark Zuckerberg launched Threads, the social media platform that is directly taking on Twitter, or should we say X. Since then, the two have been egging each other on. Tweets and posts, all talking about a real fight. Do we have a date for the fight? Not yet. Zuckerberg says he is proposed 26th of August. Musk says nothing is final. He may need a surgery before that. But even the idea that these two will fight it out is ridiculous. Are they trying to show their MMA skills? Or is it just a weird way to outdo each other? As tech titans, they are known to think out of the box, to push boundaries. But these two are taking it to a whole new level. I mean, what better way to showcase who's better than a fight that unleashes their inner warrior? But irony aside, this is a ridiculous proposition. One can't help but wonder what this cage fight is about. Is it a way for them to prove their alpha status?
Yeah, nice.
Or a modern-day duel to assert dominance in the tech industry? Or is it just a desperate attempt to distract us from the pressing issues their companies face? Both Musk and Zuckerberg have changed the world of technology. They have connected people across the globe and explored new frontiers. They could have continued with that. They could have used their platforms for real change. But instead, they are resorting to a brawl, one that will end up just stroking their own egos. Also, what message does this send to the tech industry? Are disputes now supposed to be settled by combat? Is that the new norm, or are we going back in time to the Roman era? In the end, the Musk-Zuckerberg cage fight feels like a sideshow, a distraction from the real challenges. If you have watched the movie Fight Club, you may know this. The first rule of Fight Club is that you don't talk about it. But this billionaire dollar Fight Club has different rules. And the first rule is you only talk about it. So move over Mayweather versus McGregor. This is the match we've all been waiting for. This is the battle of the billionaires. a spectacle of Silicon Valley leaders and their petty egos. Who knows what other surprises these tech titans have in store for us? As long as it's not a dance-off, I guess we will be okay.
Now let's look at what's going on in Niger. The West African nation hit by a coup is now gearing up for war. The military junta is clinging on to power. They were given an ultimatum by other West African countries, their neighbors: step down, go back to the barracks and reinstate the president, or face a military intervention. The deadline to reinstate the democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, was Sunday, August 6th. It has passed, and the junta remains in power. They have shut the airspace of Niger. They are holding massive rallies in stadiums to show off their support. And they're slamming the West African nations for trying to intervene. They say a quote-unquote foreign power is pulling their strings. No prizes for guessing who. Here's our report.
Concordant information currently in its possession indicates that forces of a foreign power are preparing to attack Niger and its people, in coordination with ECOWAS and armed terrorist groups. Faced with the threat of intervention that is becoming clearer through preparation from a neighboring country, Niger's airspace is closed as of today, Sunday, August 6, 2023, for all airports until further notice. Any attempt to violate national airspace will be met with an energetic and instantaneous response.
Niger's military junta made that announcement yesterday, the day of the deadline to release and restore President Mohamed Bazoum. Bazoum still remains in the junta's grasp, and Niger's generals are preparing for war. As you can see, all flight activity stopped over Niger yesterday. The country is preparing for a military intervention. A military intervention by the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS. That's the group that issued the ultimatum. Nigeria, a member of ECOWAS, has already cut electricity supplies to Niger. It supplies around 70% of Niger's power. This threatens to cause a humanitarian crisis in the coup-hit nation. But Niger doesn't just blame Nigeria and ECOWAS for its troubles. The coup leaders and supporters also pin the blame elsewhere. The old colonizer, France. Niger's junta may have just alluded to France during its announcement, but the coup supporters were more blunt.
It's France that is behind this ECOWAS force that wants to attack us. I think they've noticed that we have the support of Burkina, we have the support of Mali, we have the support of a certain number of partners who are ready to attack if Niger is attacked. This is a declaration of war. It's the end of ECOWAS.
Niger's junta believes it has the support of other coup-hit nations, Burkina Faso and Mali. They also happen to be former French colonies, and their leaders have also been condemning France since they took power. There's definitely anti-France sentiment that's been sweeping its former colonies in West Africa. We discussed this in detail last week, and appealing to this sentiment has helped military leaders claim legitimacy after toppling elected governments in the region. The same script is being repeated in Niger. Yesterday, the junta filled a stadium in the capital Niamey with its supporters. There were reportedly some 30,000 coup supporters present. They were seen celebrating the coup and condemning the French military presence in Niger. At the stadium, some coup supporters even chopped off the head of a chicken painted in French colors.
When the French army says it is not going to leave, well, we are going to tell the French army, we, the citizens of Niger, all the citizens of Niger, I don't even mean the army, it is the citizens who are going to make them leave.
France has some 1,500 troops stationed in the country, and it has reportedly not removed them so far. And their presence adds to the feeling some coup supporters have that they still aren't free from French colonization. That despite officially getting independence in 1960, the country has still been exploited. Supporters justify this coup by saying it's a new independence, and some are even prepared to lay down their lives for it.
63 years of aid. Where are we? We are lost in Africa. And yet, we are told that Niger is very rich in potential. And then we are lost. So what's the point of foreign aid? We would be resilient behind our defense and security forces to be able to wrest our independence, our new independence.
C'est notre façon, en tant que société civile, en tant que citoyen, de participer à la stratégie de défense de notre nation. Vous savez, dans tous les pays, la défense de notre patrie n'est pas l'apanage des seuls militaires. Nous avons, comme vous le voyez, nous n'avons pas d'armes, mais nous avons nos cœurs, nous avons notre sang, et nous avons décidé de mettre notre sang au service de la défense de notre patrie.
Niger's junta has brought reinforcements to the capital Niamey. Italy and Germany are asking ECOWAS to extend the reinstatement deadline. Mali and Burkina Faso have sent a delegation to Niger. West Africa looks to be gearing up for war, and that's the last thing the impoverished region and the world needs right now.
About a year ago, a survey was held across 17 countries. The list included the US, India and the Netherlands. People in these countries were asked one question. What do you feel about returning to office? 2/3 of them had only one response. Don't ask us to come to office or we'll quit. It was a bold claim, also a hollow one, because most of them are now dragging their feet to work, competing for parking space in offices and returning to their dull desks. What does it tell you? Crusaders of hybrid work are on the losing end of this war. Work from home is dying a slow death. The President of the United States of America agrees. Joe Biden has directed federal workers to return to office. It's a quote-unquote priority for him. Many say, about time. When federal employees work from home, they waste taxpayer money. Many cabinet agency headquarters are on rent. They cost the government millions of dollars a month. It comes up to about $5 billion every year to lease office space for the government. $5 billion, $2 billion annually on maintenance of buildings. And what for? These buildings have become a shadow of their former selves. On most days, they sit empty. The average occupancy is about 20%. So now the US government is calling staff back, and it's joining a slow but sure migration. A reverse migration, as some like to call it. People are bidding goodbye to Zoom and being hauled back to conference rooms. And leading this change are Wall Street firms, followed by tech giants like Apple, Meta, Google, and X, formerly Twitter. Also, speaking of Zoom, it slammed an ironic, if not the last nail in the coffin. Zoom has been the flag bearer of remote work. 3 years ago, the pandemic upended work patterns. It forced people into working from home, and Zoom became the go-to video conferencing service. This company revolutionized work from home. In 2020, its shares skyrocketed. They increased sixfold. But towards the end of 2021, they fell drastically. And since then, Zoom has lost $100 billion in market value. Quite the roller coaster. Also an indication of the change in work patterns the world over. Turns out, even Zoom is not immune to this post-pandemic shift. Zoom is now calling employees back to office at least 2 days a week. And with this, Zoom is joining a long list of companies. 90% of companies across the world have asked their staff to work from office. Some offered incentives to get them back. Some say they will fire workers if they don't return. So a bit of love bombing and then harsh measures, all to get people back. You may wonder why. Are companies evil slave drivers? Are they bored of offices turning into ghost towns? Are they worried about coffee machines gathering dust? Well, probably not. They have a different reason for calling you back: boosting productivity. Let me explain with some numbers. According to a study by UCLA, workers are 18% less productive when working from home. 18%. According to a study by Harvard, an online retailer saw a 4% drop in productivity due to remote work. Employees answered fewer sales calls, they had poorer interactions, and they put customers on hold for longer. Another study claims even chess professionals fare worse in online matches. So work from home may feel good, But it's not proving to be great for business. It makes harder for teams to collaborate. Professional networks within companies become isolated. A study conducted this year found that when you work from home, you do not exchange enough feedback. You find it harder to learn new skills. So while video conferencing is convenient and appears cost-effective, it proves to be expensive over time for your company. And companies know this. They're struggling to find the right balance. Some are cushioning the blow with hybrid work. Others are simply landing blows with ultimatums. The fact is, the way we work is changing again. Only this time it feels like the revolution has turned full circle and we are back to where we started. Which side of the divide are you on? Write to us. We'd love to hear from you. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Starting with the United States of America, a massive fire broke out at a plastic recycling facility. Officials have issued a health alert due to hazardous air pollution. In Alaska, an entire house collapsed in the Mendenhall River after record glacier flooding. And Italy's Coast Guard rescued more than 50 migrants after 2 shipwrecks. The rescue operation took place off an island in the Mediterranean Sea. And finally, what makes the 7th of August significant? On this day in 1960, the West African nation of Ivory Coast gained independence from France. It became a French colony in 1893. In 1958, Ivory Coast became a self-governing independent republic within the French rule. We're leaving you with that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
There goes.
Recuperali tutti.
Forza, bravi.